Ukraine blitz burns Putin's factories and oil, and U.S. drops terrifying invasion warning on Poland. Something dangerous is happening far beyond the front line. Ukraine is no longer only fighting Russia in the trenches. Reports suggest Ukrainian drones are now striking deeper into Russian territory, hitting oil terminals, military-linked sites, and infrastructure that helps fuel Moscow's war machine. But the biggest shock is not just the fire over Russian facilities. It is the warning now reportedly reaching Poland. According to recent reports, the United States has warned Warsaw that Russia may be preparing some kind of provocation against Poland or the Baltic region, possibly to test NATO's reaction. And that changes the entire meaning of this story. Because if Ukraine is burning Russia's oil network at the same time NATO's eastern flank is being warned about Russian pressure, then this is no longer just another war update. This could be a new phase of pressure, fear, and calculation. The question now is simple. Is Putin being forced onto the defensive, or is Moscow preparing to widen the danger? Right now, the latest focus is on Ukraine's deep strike campaign. In recent days, reports say Ukrainian drones targeted areas near St. Petersburg, including oil and port infrastructure. Russian officials said air defenses intercepted many drones, while local authorities confirmed damage in some areas. Ukraine has described these long-range strikes as a way to weaken Russia's ability to fund and supply its war. And that is the key point. This is not only about explosions, it is about pressure. Oil is money. Fuel is logistics. Refineries are not just industrial buildings. They are part of the system that keeps tanks moving, aircraft flying, and military transport functioning. When Ukraine strikes these targets, it is sending Moscow a message. You may attack our cities, but your own war economy is no longer untouchable. For months, Russia has tried to present the war as something contained inside Ukraine. Moscow's message to its own public has often been that life inside Russia can continue as normal. But every fire at an oil terminal, every drone alert near a major city, and every disruption to air traffic weakens that message. It tells ordinary Russians that the war is coming closer, and for the Kremlin, that is politically dangerous. Because Putin's power depends not only on battlefield control, it also depends on the belief that he can protect Russia from the consequences of his own invasion. That belief is now under pressure. But here is the deeper question. Why would Ukraine focus so heavily on oil and industrial targets now? The answer may be simple. Ukraine is trying to create a cost Russia cannot ignore. On the front line, Russia still has manpower, artillery, missiles, and drones. In some areas, Russian forces continue to push. Ukraine cannot always match Russia shell for shell. So Kyiv appears to be looking for another pressure point. Instead of only fighting where Russia expects, Ukraine is hitting where Russia feels pain economically. A refinery fire can do more than damage one facility. It can create shortages. It can force repairs. It can divert air defenses. It can make Russia spend more money protecting sites that were once considered safe. And most importantly, it can force Moscow to react. In war, initiative matters. The side with initiative makes the other side answer. And right now, Ukraine appears to be trying to make Russia answer on multiple fronts at once: the battlefield, the economy, the home front, and the information war. That is why these strikes matter. Not because one drone attack changes the whole war overnight, but because repeated attacks can create a pattern, and patterns create pressure. Reports in recent weeks have pointed to repeated Ukrainian strikes on Russian oil facilities, depots, refineries, and terminals. Some reports say certain facilities have been hit more than once. That repetition is important. It means Ukraine is not only looking for symbolic targets, it may be trying to grind down Russia's repair capacity and stretch its defenses. If Russia moves air defenses to protect refineries, other areas may become weaker. If Russia keeps defenses near military bases, energy facilities may remain exposed. If Russia tries to protect everything, it may protect protect nothing perfectly. That is the dilemma Ukraine wants to create. And this is where the Poland warning becomes extremely serious. According to recent reporting, the United States has warned Poland that Russia may be considering a military provocation or some kind of pressure operation designed to test NATO's resolve. That does not mean a full-scale invasion is guaranteed. It does not mean war with NATO is inevitable. But even the warning itself is important, because Poland is not just another European country. Poland is a NATO member. It borders Ukraine and Belarus. It is one of Kyiv's most important logistical partners. Military aid, humanitarian support, and regional defense planning all run through this wider eastern flank. So if Russia pressures Poland, it is not only pressuring Warsaw, it is sending a message to NATO. The possible message would be this: how far are you really willing to go? And that is a dangerous question. Russia has used gray zone tactics before: sabotage claims, cyber attacks, disinformation, border pressure, drone incidents, and deniable operations. These tactics are designed to create fear without immediately triggering a full military response. They live in the space between peace and open war. That space is where miscalculation becomes most dangerous, because one side may think it is only testing, the other side may see it as an attack. And in Europe's current security environment, even one mistake could trigger a much larger crisis. This is why NATO's eastern flank is watching closely. Poland, the Baltic states, and other regional allies have spent years warning that Russia's threat does not stop at Ukraine. For them, Ukraine is not a distant war. It is a warning about what could happen next if Moscow believes the West is divided, tired, or afraid. That is why every Russian signal matters. A military exercise matters. A drone incident matters. A sabotage warning matters. A missile trajectory matters. And now, a reported U.S. warning to Poland matters, because it suggests Western intelligence is not only watching the front line in Ukraine, it is watching the possibility that Russia may try to create pressure beyond Ukraine. But would Putin really risk testing NATO? That is the question many viewers are asking. The answer is complicated. A direct attack on NATO would be extremely dangerous for Russia. It could trigger Article 5 discussions and bring the alliance closer to open confrontation. But a limited provocation is different. A drone crossing a border, a cyber attack on infrastructure, a strike that Moscow denies, a sabotage operation blamed on unknown actors, a sudden incident near a sensitive border zone. These are the kinds of actions that create confusion first and answers later. And confusion is often the goal. If Russia can make NATO hesitate, Moscow may see that as a win. If NATO responds strongly, Russia may claim the West is escalating. If NATO responds weakly, Moscow may believe the alliance can be pressured. That is the trap. And this is why the next 24 to 72 hours matter. Ukraine's strikes are creating pressure inside Russia. Russia's response could come in several forms. First, Moscow may intensify attacks on Ukrainian cities and energy infrastructure. Russia has done this before after major Ukrainian strikes. Second, Russia may increase information warfare, claiming Ukraine is attacking civilians or trying to destabilize Russia. Third, Russia may move more air defenses toward important oil and military sites, which could reveal where Moscow feels most vulnerable. And fourth, Russia may increase pressure on NATO's eastern flank, not necessarily through open invasion, but through threats, provocations, or hybrid operations. This is the part viewers should watch carefully. Not only what burns, but who reacts. Does the Kremlin stay quiet, or does it escalate its language? Does Poland raise security levels? Does NATO issue new warnings? Does Ukraine claim more strikes? Do Russian fuel problems worsen? These reactions will tell us whether this is just another violent week in the war or the start of something larger. For Ukraine, the goal appears clear. Keep Russia under pressure. Make the war more expensive. Force Moscow to defend its own territory. Show allies that Ukraine can still hit back. And remind Putin that distance is no longer protection. For Russia, the challenge is also clear. Protect critical infrastructure. Control domestic fear. Keep pressure on Ukraine. Avoid looking weak. And decide whether to escalate, deny, or absorb the damage. But Putin has a problem. If he responds too weakly, he looks vulnerable. If he responds too aggressively, he risks drawing NATO closer. That is the narrow path Moscow is walking. And that is why this story is getting attention, because it combines three powerful fears at once: fire inside Russia, economic damage to Putin's war machine, and a possible warning that NATO's eastern border could be tested. This is not just a headline designed to shock. It reflects a real strategic question. Can Ukraine make Russia pay a higher price without triggering a wider war? And can NATO deter Russia without giving Moscow the escalation story it wants? For now, the situation remains fluid. Some claims are still developing. Some details may change. But the direction is clear. Ukraine is pushing the war deeper into Russia's economic system. Russia is trying to maintain pressure on Ukraine while managing growing risks at home. And NATO's eastern flank is being forced to prepare for scenarios that once sounded extreme, but now look increasingly possible. So the biggest question tonight is not only whether Ukraine hit another Russian oil facility. The bigger question is what Putin does next. Does he absorb the damage? Does he strike harder inside Ukraine? Does he test NATO with a deniable provocation? Or does he realize that the war he launched is now becoming more difficult to contain? One thing is certain: the next move will matter. Because in this war, every fire, every warning, and every border alarm is no longer isolated. They are pieces of a larger pressure game. And right now, that pressure is rising fast.